It is a Thursday, and that means Thursday night football is on everybody's mind. And we have a matchup that, let's face it, Vegas tells us isn't going to be much of a matchup. The Bills favored by 12.5 over the Dolphins. And it raises just sort of the weirdest question to be asking after only a couple of weeks, Caroline. Like, what are we going to have to see at this point to actually believe in the Dolphins? In fact, is there some element here where we walk away from this and we say, man, Mike McDaniel could get canned after this one?
12.5 is a massive spread.
In
12
the
and a
NFL,
half
yeah.
points, and I'd lay it. Honestly, like if I'm going to put money on this game, I would lay the points with the Buffalo Bills. I think a lot of times that's the narrative that we want to portray, right? Like things go so badly that you have no choice but to fire the coach. I feel so confident that Mike McDaniel's time or his future in Miami will be incredibly short because I don't think that there is any sort of sense of optimism in that locker room or in that front office for his ability to be able to turn this ship around. The roster doesn't seem to be deep enough or talented enough, nor do they play Fitz, in my opinion, with a level of fire and tenacity that I think is necessary, a level of buy-in that I think is necessary to at least give people, little building blocks to hold on to think, okay, this team is continuing to figure things out. So what would an outcome of tonight or a final score would it be to ultimately cut ties with Mike McDaniel? I don't know. 100-0, 150-0. Would it 24-21 give people enough hope that Mike McDaniel is the truth and he's the answer in Miami? I don't think so, nor do I think it should. So I don't think that the end should justify the means. I don't think that the outcome tonight, one way or another, should necessarily change the way that we view Mike McDaniel, because this is one data point, and we have lots of other data points that point to Mike McDaniel not being the answer for the Miami Dolphins.
So there is no hard and fast rule. And I hate that we have to say this every time, but let's just say this clearly to get it out there. Nobody on this show is ever rooting for a coach to get fired. Okay. I don't care how
Correct.
bad your situation is. I'm never rooting for somebody to lose their job. Now that we've said what should be the obvious, but isn't always, I don't think that there's a hard and fast rule on when the right time is to move on from a coach. And I struggle with this because I've made fun of my own organization, my favorite team, for firing coaches all the time. But there's a real question. Once you know you don't have the right guy, what's the right thing to do? And I think that's why situations matter. In fact, this week on radio in Nashville, I was hanging out with our buddy Buck Rising. I was asked about what to do in the Titans situation. And I said, sure, if you believe Callahan is setting Cam Ward back, you fire him. I don't care if it's 2 weeks in. That's a different situation because you're developing a young quarterback. The Bears developing a young quarterback is a different situation. There is not a development issue here. So now if you're the Dolphins, what you're looking at is saying, do we have the right guy in the room? And what good will it do to make change right now? I don't really know the answer to that. I mean, is there somebody else on their staff that's suddenly going to be able to light a fire under these guys' butts and get a wildly different result? Are they really in that situation? I don't know. So that's why, as much as we talk about the firing of Mike McDaniel, honestly, Caroline, I think they could lose by a boatload. I think they could be boat race tonight and McDaniel's still going to be the head coach because I'm not sure what I see as the benefit. Other than making fans feel better about the fact that their team sucks, I don't see any great benefit to suddenly making a coaching change. Rarely, sometimes, but rarely does an interim coach come in and suddenly get the juices flowing in a way that makes a drastic difference. And I don't think that there's any coach on that staff that's going to come in and make the Dolphins as good as the Bills. So what have you seen in the first 2 weeks of the season that you couldn't anticipate? So I feel like as much as we talk about the hot seat of Mike McDaniel, barring a 70-0 sort of shellacking like they did to Denver a few years ago, I just don't see a result here. If they lose by 3 touchdowns, I don't think that that's a fireable offense because at some point, I'm not sure what makes it better.
Because there are so many other fireable offenses. It wouldn't just be losing by 3 touchdowns. And I think that the final straw has already come and gone to where 3 touchdowns would a 3 touchdown loss would just kind of be confirming what we already know, that time has run out and the shine is off the apple with Mike McDaniel. I think the only reason why you would make a change right now is if you feel like there is enough season left. You got 15 games left, including the game tonight against the Bills. After this game, 14 games left to be able to right the ship, to turn things around. So if everybody in that locker room, the leaders in that locker room, and the leaders in the clubhouse, if they believe that Mike McDaniel is the piece that is standing in their way to turn things around and, eventually piece together a 9-8 season, a winning season, whatever, the view of success might be for this team after firing a coach, if they feel like the talent in this locker room and the ability of this team is better than what they're getting, and they feel like they can still get that out of this team just with new leadership, that's why you would make that change. But if you don't believe that, if you just think this is kind of a foregone season, I guess you just hold on to him, and then you be the first team that goes out and starts interviewing some of these young up and coming coaches, or you start to get a jump start on interviewing coaches before any other team in the NFL fires their head coach. Because I think Brian Callahan in Tennessee is another one that will probably be let go before the end of the season. To get a jump on the interview process, I guess, would be why you would do it.
I guess, but the other part of this you have to take into account is a little bit of Tua's personality, because certainly you want to get the most out of your quarterback that you paid some money to. And where I think is interesting, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but Tua is an I love you man quarterback. And you've heard me say this before, but certain quarterbacks need affirmation. And I think it became pretty clear when Tua talked about having better success under McDaniel simply because he felt better support. He felt like the organization believed in him. And I love that level of honesty. There is nothing wrong with somebody that needs positivity. In fact, I would say that about myself. I respond to either very, very tough, like, hey, you suck at this, great, I'll respond to that. But I like to work with people that I think believe in what I do. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. Tua has admitted, that the previous coaching staff coached him in a different tone that he didn't like. He sort of crumbled under. So if you're going to make change, and part of the point of making change is that you want to get more out of your team, there's a fine line to how do you get more out of your team, but also make sure you're enforcing some of what your quarterback needs. I don't say that as a negative, but it's just one of the factors you have to take into here. If you're saying, hey, we're going to make a change at the head coach to bring a spark to the organization, I think you do have to be at least a little nervous that spark could lead to some sort of negative impact to your quarterback also. Like, figuring out the right way to handle this locker room is an issue. And I'm not trying to say the season's lost, but I think the Dolphins are going to be 0-3. And when they're 0-3, they're going to have to sit down and figure out, what does this 0-3 look like? Where do we think we would be? And what will actually turn it around? And if you don't have good, tangible work on what will turn it around in 1 week, I don't think you make a change just to make a change just so the fans don't feel like you suck.
I also do wonder how committed the Dolphins want to be to Tua moving forward. Like, financially right now, they are committed to Tua. But we've seen it in Denver, and CMAC did some fabulous reporting on what the options and avenues would be for the Dolphins if they want to move forward without Tua and take that cap hit that is really, really, really going to hurt, but you can justify it by saying, hey, we know he's not our guy. We know Tua's not the guy, so we have to do whatever is in our power to go out and find that guy. So I do wonder, and you make a very fair point about the coaching staff, that you want to make sure that whoever you bring in is going to be able to get the most out of your players to make that locker room gel much better than it has in the past, or it has over the course of 2 games so far this season. But if they're not committed to Tua, or they want to explore avenues where they can move on from Tua, what's holding you back? What's stopping you from making that change at the top to then eventually make that change at the quarterback position?
You are 1,000% right. But one thing that CMAC stressed to me when I was doing inside coverage, which, by the way, you can watch on Yahoo Sports networks at 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. When I was doing inside coverage all the time, one thing that CMAC stressed was that it became much easier to take that salary cap hit of getting rid of Russ once Sean Payton knew he loved Bo Nix. Now, how that will play out, I don't know. But if you are going to take, according to Over the Cap right now, if they were to cut to at some point, it looks like it could be anywhere from $70 to $90 million in dead cap, depending on when they do it and how they allocate that money.
Man.
If you're going to take that, you better know that you got a quarterback you love in the draft, because the only way you're replacing that is with rookie equity, and I just don't know that player exists.